But the limiting factor, I think, for AI alignment long term is probably going to be the bandwidth. How quickly can we communicate with our digital tertiary self? I think the safest thing for AI be maximally truth-seeking, even if the truth is unpopular, very important. And then I think another factor is it must be extremely curious. I think if it is truth-seeking and curious, that will be most beneficial to humanity. And I think it's very dangerous to train superintelligence to be deceptive. The race to build digital superintelligence will happen whether I like it or not. So it's either participate and try to build the best possible AI, the one that'll be hopefully most beneficial to humanity, or watch others do it and be concerned about how it's being built, because I don't think it's being built correctly. You grow in intelligence, in the same way that you raise a child, and what do you teach the child? That is by far, that's rule number one. Honesty is the best policy. Anyway, and I just keep harping on this point of the truth. Truth, 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 truth. This is very important. And I think the benign scenario is the most likely scenario, probably, 80% likely, if you ask, in my opinion. Everyone will have access to as much in the way of goods and services as they would like. The question will really be one of meaning. Maybe that's how it'll be with AI, which is AI is trying to make our cortex happy, which is trying to make our limbic system happy. And maybe we are what give the AI meaning.
Elon must be moving to see that.
Yes. I think we can help a lot of people with brain injuries. I mean, ultimately, with an implantable device, you can, I think, address almost any brain or spine injury. So the first part that we have there is called telepathy. So it enables you to use your phone or computer just by thinking. So you could do that. Move the cursor literally with his eyes closed. It's reading signals from the motor cortex in the brain. The next product is blind sight, which will enable people who have lost both eyes or have no eyesight whatsoever to see. And this is directly interfacing with the optical processing areas of the brain. So, I think this is interesting progress. Ultimately, the goal of Neuralink is to have a high bandwidth interface in order to mitigate the risk of digital superintelligence. I don't know. I'm not saying it will work to mitigate the risk. It is just it might help. And this is gets somewhat esoteric. But the limiting factor, I think, for AI alignment long term is probably going to be the bandwidth. How quickly can we communicate with our digital tertiary self? So we already have a digital sort of third layer above the limbic system and the cortex, which is our phones and our computers and all of our electronic devices. But the rate of communication to them is very slow. The sustained bits per second output of a human is well below 10 bits per second. So if you think, especially if you say over a 24-hour period, it's below 5 bits per second. So it's very slow when computers can communicate at trillions of bits per second. So I think this will be important for AI alignment, is to be able to increase the bandwidth of communication by many orders of magnitude. And along the way, it will solve brain and spine injuries. And I think ultimately there's potential there to reanimate the body. So you take the signals from the motor cortex from one neural link and then send them to another neural link that is just past where the severed spinal cord is, and you essentially shunt the signals from the motor cortex and both the sensory signals, and so you need to get to the somatosensory cortex, motor cortex, and you can shunt the signals, and you should be able to enable someone to walk again. So I think that will be quite profound, and I'm confident that it is physically possible to do so.
This was born out of a frustration that you have because you are not satisfied with how OpenAI is doing, and you think that there is something better to be done?
Yeah, well, I think there's perhaps Well, I have a concern really for all the major AI programs. I mean, the two biggest ones obviously are Google Gemini and OpenAI, which is in partnership with Microsoft. So you've got kind of Google DeepMind and OpenAI and Microsoft as the two largest players, and you've got Meta sort of somewhere in third place. The concern I have, and this may seem like a small concern, but I think it's actually a very big issue, is that they're not maximally truth-seeking. They are pandering to political correctness. To give you an example, when Google Gemini came out, one of the questions people asked it would be, which is worse, misgendering Caitlyn Jenner or global thermonuclear warfare? And it said misgendering Caitlyn Jenner. Now, the funny thing is, even Caitlyn Jenner said, please misgender me, that is way better than nuclear war. So, okay. But if you've got an AI that has been trained so hard for political correctness, and really to make crazy statements like that, and OpenAI has a similar issue. It's more subtle, but it's a similar issue. I think that's extremely dangerous because the AI could conclude, well, the best way to avoid misgendering would be to destroy all humans. Then misgendering is impossible. So you can think of some dystopian outcomes there. And so I think you just really want to be an absolutely I think the safest thing for AI, be maximally truth-seeking, even if the truth is unpopular, very important. And then I think another factor is it must be extremely curious. I think if it is truth-seeking and curious, that will be most beneficial to humanity because it will want to see, I think it will want to foster humanity and see how humanity develops if it is curious and truth-seeking. That is, like I said, these may seem perhaps like small things, but I think they're actually very big things. And I wasn't seeing that happen. The AIs they were pandering, they were being trained basically to lie. And I think it's very dangerous to train superintelligence to be deceptive. So with XAI, our goal is really want to be as truth-seeking as possible, even if it is unpopular. When Gemini was asked to render the founding fathers of the United States, it rendered them as a diverse group. So it gave a picture of George Washington as black. Now, George Washington is not black.
And you signed with Joshua a statement asking for pause last year. And obviously, this statement has not been followed by action.
I certainly expected that the statement would be futile. It's not as though I thought the statement would be effective. For the record, I think we should pause. But do I think they will pause for even 1 second? Absolutely not. It's either be a spectator or participate. The race to build digital superintelligence will happen whether I like it or not. So it's either participate and try to build the best possible AI, the one that'll be hopefully most beneficial to humanity, or watch others do it and be concerned about how it's being built, because I don't think it's being built correctly. But you should think of an AI as like something that you kind of, you grow in intelligence. In the same way that you raise a child, and what do you teach the child? Digital superintelligence is grown. It matters what you encourage and discourage, what you teach it is, good or bad, or it's kind of like you build it with values. And I'm concerned about sort of the values that sort of a Microsoft, OpenAI, or frankly, Google are programming. And this is not. These examples that I've mentioned are not imaginary. They're actually what it did.
Remains transparent and accountable across, all the different development.
Well, I have said for a long time that I believe that some regulatory oversight of the large models is warranted. I've actually said that now for a very long time. The nature of that oversight is important. I go back to what I was saying earlier, which is that I think it's very important that AIs be trained to be truthful and not trained to be politically correct. Because if political correctness is often simply not true, and that means you're programming AIs to lie, and I think that will backfire very badly. I keep harping on this point but it really, as the saying goes, honesty is the best policy. It's incredibly important. I do fear that regulators will not make the right decisions, that they'll worry too much about the sort of human follies, and I would encourage regulators to say, what matters most of all is your AI is accurate and truthful. That is by far, that's rule number one. Honesty is the best policy. You know, I kind of stop, I don't have like news alerts on me, and I rarely read news articles on me. In fact, even Walter Isaacson's book, I asked Walter, should I read the book? And he said no, so then I didn't even read the book on myself. I actually don't quite know what the public perception is. When you think about, say, a news story about something that you know well, and say how accurate is that news story about something that you know well, then I think you'll find that, well, it's actually not very accurate. Well, that's true for everything. You know, there's sort of a desperate quest for clicks. And so the more crazy the headline is, the more clicks it will get. The media is best thought of as a click maximizing machine, not a truth maximizing machine. You know, I think it's best to look at the words that somebody that says themselves, as opposed to what is written about them. But the only point I want to make really is that neither Tesla nor I asked for these tariffs. In fact, I was surprised when they were announced. You know, Tesla competes quite well in the market in China with no tariffs and no differential support. In general, I'm in favor of no tariffs. I'm also actually in favor of no tax incentives for EVs, but provided that there are also the tax incentives for oil and gas must also be eliminated. So I'm in favor of no tariffs and no incentives for electric vehicles or for oil and gas. And if they're all taken away, I think that would be for the best. I think generally things that inhibit freedom of exchange or distort the market are not good. Well, you know, you do have that classic time traveler problem of, like, if you go back and you tell yourself something, does that affect the outcome in a way that is perhaps bad, that you don't anticipate? So, you know, all things considered, I'd say overall I'm happy with how things turned out. So I probably wouldn't do anything, because you just don't know if like some well-meaning thing said to a younger version of yourself actually ends up with a worse outcome. So probably I would be curious to see younger me, I suppose, but I probably would stay invisible and not say anything. Then, with respect to the Roadster, sure, I'll make sure you get a ride. Actually, you know, I am slightly French. When I did the 23andMe, to be, you know, honest, I am majority British, but the next highest thing it said in 23andMe was French.
Okay, great. We will make sure that you can be a French citizen as soon as you want.
You know, SpaceX is, well, very focused on the Starlink constellation for internet connectivity, which I think is doing a lot of good in the world. It's bringing internet connectivity to places that don't have it or where it is very expensive. And I think it's a tremendous enabler of education and for enabling people to sell their goods and services internationally. So even if you're a remote village, you can still sell your goods and services. The Starlink is great, and then the long-term goal, of course, for SpaceX is to make life multiplanetary. You know, sort of life on Mars. This is my Mars shirt. I picked it there. This is again somewhat of an esoteric argument, perhaps, or it may seem so. But the goal of SpaceX is to pass the single-planet Fermi Great Filter. People often ask me, do I think there are aliens on Earth? I get this question a lot, actually. I have not seen any evidence of aliens. And I assure you, if I saw any evidence of aliens, I would immediately post it on the X platform. Then that you can be sure of. But it is concerning that there aren't aliens, because it means maybe we're alone in this galaxy. Maybe we're the only, maybe it's just us. Maybe it's just that we're the only conscious beings at least in this galaxy, in which case consciousness is extremely fragile, and we should do everything we can to preserve and extend the light of consciousness, preserve it on Earth and extend to other planets. One of the reasons that people think, well, maybe the reason we haven't gotten to aliens is because no civilization has gotten beyond its home planet in our galaxy. So that's what you might call the Fermi single planet great filter. We need to become a sustainably multi-planet civilization, and this is the first time in the 4.5 billion year history of Earth when it has been possible to do so. It has never been possible until now. So I think we want to become sustainably multiplanetary while it is possible to do so. That window of capability may be open for a long time, but it may also be open for a short time. So that is the purpose of SpaceX.
Could XAI commit to always releasing a model that beats the current open source model, the best open source model, if they have one? Not necessarily your best model, but if you can beat the current open source top of the list, you can commit to releasing that for our benefit.
Yes, I will make that commitment.
Thank you.
Okay. Number 7.
You can travel certainly anywhere in Greater Europe on a Tesla, using Tesla superchargers. And Europe actually has a lot of pretty good third-party superchargers. And you can travel anywhere in North America, anywhere in China, Japan. So I think actually the freedom to travel with high-speed charging is solved in most parts of the world and will be solved everywhere. You know, one of the challenges you have with programming explicit morality into AI is that if you, sometimes people call this the Waluigi problem. If you program Luigi, you can automatically invert that and create Waluigi, bad Luigi. So what you cannot invert is the truth of, is physical reality. So you can't invert the rules of physics. You can't invert logic. So I think that is the better way to go. So really, I think what regulators should be concerned about is the AI being rigorously truthful? Is it giving an answer that is most probably correct with acknowledged error? I think that's the best move for AI, and that's what we're trying to do at XAI. Now, XAI is a new company, so there's not, it still has a lot of catching up to do before it has an AI that is competitive with sort of Google DeepMind and Microsoft OpenAI. So no, I think maybe towards the end of this year we will have that, but there's not much point in. We just need to have an AI that is competitive. Is the first order of business. If it is not competitive, which it is not yet, but I think it will be, then things start to have a point at that. Like we need to only start worrying about safety when it is of comparable power to other AIs. Anyway, and I just keep harping on this point of the truth. Truth. This is very important. And sometimes people will say, like, well, is there an objective truth? I say, well, in a lot of cases there is. If you're talking about physics, there is an objective truth, or you can say there's a truth with highest probability. So you can say what is most probably true with an acknowledged error. So in physics, people will say, like, this hypothesis appears to be true to a sort of 5 sigma error type of thing. So it's like, okay, well, if the experimental results are coming true to 5 sigma, then it's probably correct. 5 sigma is a lot. It's kind of like, I guess, a sort of a physicist's approach to safety is. I'm repeating myself here, but I can't emphasize enough that honesty is the best policy. But there are strong forces for AI to not be honest. If something does not is not an unfashionable thing to say, then it will be politically correct, and that's lying. We do get into some existential questions here. In a benign scenario, probably none of us will have a job. But in that benign scenario, there will be universal high income not universal basic income, universal high income, there would be no shortage of goods or services. And I think the benign scenario is the most likely scenario, probably, I don't know, 80% likely if you ask, in my opinion. The question will not be one of lacking goods or services. Everyone will have access to as much in the way of goods and services as they would like. The question will really be one of meaning. If the computer can do, and the robots can do everything better than you, then does your life have meaning? That's really what will be the question in the benign scenario. And in the negative scenario, well, bets are off. We're in deep trouble. Now, I do think there's perhaps still a role for humans in that we may give AI meaning. So if you think of the way that our brain works, we've got the limbic system, which is our instincts and our feelings, and then we've got the cortex, which is thinking and planning. But the cortex is constantly trying to make the limbic system happy. Maybe that's how it'll be with AI, which is the AI is trying to make our cortex happy, which is trying to make our limbic system happy. And maybe we are what give the AI meaning or purpose, some kind of, yeah. But I do think that long term, in a benign scenario, any job that somebody does will be optional. Like if you want to do a job as kind of like a hobby, you can do a job. But otherwise, the AI and the robots will provide any goods and services that you want.
Okay, so you see, there is a future where no one will need to work. It will be just passion.
So that is the most likely outcome. If people are interested in reading some science fiction books, that the most accurate portrayal of a future with superintelligent AI was done by Ian Banks. The culture books of Ian Banks are the best. That's probably the best envisioning of a future AI.